The small house stood in silence, its wooden walls trembling with every gust of the cold night wind. Inside, a dim lamp flickered weakly in the corner, casting long shadows across the floor. A little girl, no older than 7, pressed herself against her mother's side, her tiny hands trembling as she whispered through broken sobs, "Please, don't hurt us." Her eyes, wide with fear, searched for a sign of safety, but safety never seemed to live here. Her mother, pale and exhausted, tried to pull her daughter closer, shielding her with fragile arms that had borne too many burdens. Life had been cruel to her long before this night, long before these tears. She had married young, full of hope, believing love would last forever. But love, she discovered, could turn into chains when paired with anger, poverty, and disappointment. The man towering over them now was no stranger to cruelty. He wasn't the little girl's father, though he carried the title of stepfather in name. To her, he was the reason nightmares bled into daylight. His voice, sharp and venomous, filled the small house. He cursed at them for things beyond their control, for an empty dinner plate, for bills that went unpaid, for a life that never matched his expectations. And yet, beyond the fear, beyond the shouting, there was a hidden truth the little girl had never known. She did have a real father. A man of wealth and power. A man who had been absent, yes, but not out of choice. A man who believed his daughter lived a life of comfort, when in reality she was growing up in shadows. It all began years ago, when her parents' paths had split. Her mother, desperate and young, walked away from a man who had built empires but never seemed to be home. She thought she was doing the right thing, choosing simplicity over riches, choosing presence over absence. But the man she ran to turned out to be a wolf in disguise. He promised her love, but delivered only bitterness. The millionaire father. Ethan Ward had built a life where the world bowed to him. His name filled magazines. His businesses stretched across continents. Yet for all the glitz and glamour, his heart carried an emptiness. He often wondered about his little girl. He sent money, letters, and gifts through the years, but none reached her. They were intercepted, hidden, or returned unopened by the man her mother chose afterward. Ethan's greatest failure was believing the lie that his daughter was fine without him. Until one night, everything changed. The little girl's cry, those heartbreaking words, "Don't hurt us," rippled through the darkness, though she didn't know destiny was listening. That very night, Ethan had returned from a long trip abroad. For years, he had hired private investigators, begged for contact, and searched quietly in the background. Finally, a breakthrough came. He discovered where his daughter and her mother lived. Without hesitation, he left his mansion, his tailored suits, his fleet of cars, and drove alone to the small neighborhood where broken dreams lived. When he stepped out of his sleek car, the sight of the crumbling house tore at him. This was no place for his daughter. His pulse thundered as he approached. He heard the shouting before he even opened the door. And then, he entered. The room froze. The little girl's sobs hung in the air like shattered glass. Her stepfather, red-eyed and furious, spun around at the sound of the door slamming open. And behind him stood Ethan Ward, his presence towering not just because of his wealth or power, but because he was a father who had finally found his child. "Enough!" Ethan's voice thundered, shaking the very walls. The stepfather sneered, trying to mask his fear. "What are you doing here? You don't belong in this house." But Ethan's gaze had already locked onto his daughter. Her tiny frame trembling. Her tear-streaked face hiding against her mother's dress. For the first time, their eyes met, father and daughter. And in that moment, the world stood still. "Get away from them," Ethan commanded, his voice low, dangerous, and unyielding. The man scoffed, but Ethan stepped forward, his presence alone enough to silence any defiance. "I said, get away." For once, the stepfather obeyed. The little girl blinked in disbelief. She had dreamed of heroes before, knights, princes, angels, but never imagined one would walk through her door. Her mother, torn between guilt and relief, whispered his name. "Ethan." Emotion burned in his chest as he walked closer, kneeling down so his eyes were level with his daughter's. "Sweetheart," his voice cracked, softer now, breaking under the weight of years lost. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm here." Daddy's here. Her small body shook with sobs as she buried her face in his chest, clinging to him as though he was her lifeline. And in truth, he was. The challenges didn't end that night. There were battles with the courts, long nights of rebuilding trust, and painful conversations about the years stolen. The mother, weighed down by her choices, struggled with shame but slowly rebuilt herself too, with Ethan's help. The little girl, scarred by fear, needed time, patience, and therapy to heal. But day by day, hope returned. Ethan made a promise, not with wealth, not with grand gestures, but with presence. He showed up at every school play, every doctor's appointment, every bedtime story. He learned that being a father wasn't about riches, it was about being there when his daughter whispered, "Don't leave me." And he never did again. As time passed, the little girl's laughter returned. The nightmares faded. And she grew up strong, resilient, and filled with the kind of love that only comes from healing after heartbreak. By the end of their journey, the family discovered something powerful: life will test you, people will fail you, but hope is never truly lost. Even in the